here for is this episode 5 already?
It
Episode
is.
5 of Money. Yeah, this has been fun. And we're going
Yeah.
to have some fun today. It's going to be a little bit shorter than usual today. We've got a couple things I want to go over. First, we have a question to address. That's become our pattern now. And anyone, by the way, who wants to have your question answered on the program, just go to moneypodcast.net and you can submit your question there and we will see it and we will act on it and we will include you. But the question that we came up with today is one that a lot of people ask. It's a fairly frequent question. I mean, you've mentioned to me that it's one that you get a lot. It's actually also had appearances on other money programs. I know Dave Ramsey has dealt with this. So he's gotten pushback on this one. It's a fairly common question, but I think it's an important one for us to address. So the question is this. Person asking, should I focus on paying down debt and then saving money, or should I do it the other way around?
Oh, that question, I have been asked that question more times than I can count, honestly. And it's so interesting because I don't have an absolute answer. An absolute meaning that there is one answer for everyone. I don't think anybody's financial plan is exactly the same. So the way that I would tackle this question is going back to what are your goals? What is the most important thing to you, and what are your values? Sometimes I learned this early on in my life in a personal development course, that we can have cherished beliefs or values
Mm.
that take us down a road that we don't necessarily want to go down, but we haven't evaluated those cherished beliefs or values. And paying off your home is something that I've seen in different generations be a cherished belief or cherished value. And I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, but it depends. If you're 50 years old and you have $0 saved, you don't have enough time to do both, typically, unless you have lots and lots of money, which
Which could
is
happen.
usually not. Yeah, it could happen. It's
Yep.
not usually why you're asking the question, though.
Not normally, no.
Not normally. So I mean, in that scenario or in every scenario, I think it's important to evaluate where you are and what your goals are ahead of you, where you want to be, and those values, what's driving the decision making.
Mm.
Because I'll see a lot of people put money away, stock money right onto their debt, so their mortgage, and then never save on the other side of things. And government pensions don't pay a whole lot. And so I used to use this analogy all the time. It's really difficult to eat your doorknobs in retirement.
This is true.
So it's absolutely true. So you
It's
would have
true.
to sell that asset to get the money out of it,
Mm.
or to do a reverse mortgage. That's a whole different topic.
Mm.
But you would need to sell the asset to obtain the money. So when you retire at 55, 60, 65, whatever the number is for you, your plan would have to be, if you sunk all your money into your home, is to sell said home and move somewhere else. And what I've seen on that side of things is that things don't get cheaper. So
Mm.
you're probably not going to be able to buy a home and fund your retirement. Maybe if you significantly downsize and go from a big house to a smaller apartment or something like that, there's possibilities. There's always a billion possibilities at play. But we have to balance the two things. The value of I don't want to be in debt anymore and I want to have a paid off mortgage, or a paid off house, versus how much time you have to save. I actually did this calculation for a young couple that's my clients,
Mm.
and they are in their late 20s, like 27, 28, in that range. And they asked me that question. And it's really funny because the girl asked me, the wife asked me the question, and the guy rolls his eyes. And it's funny because he's my cousin. Uh, he rolls his eyes at his wife and says, she's an investment broker. Like, she's not going to tell you to do anything but invest. And I said, actually, I'm going to tell you I need to run the numbers for your scenario because I know what's important to you. You guys don't like having debt. You'd like to have a paid off mortgage, but you are leaning and looking towards the future. So, what path is best for you? If you had this lump sum of money, does it make sense to put that into an investment? Let me run the numbers. Let me look at, what would it look like if you paid off your house? And for their scenario, It actually worked out very similar if they paid this huge chunk to their mortgage, finished paying off their mortgage by X date, and then took that mortgage monthly amount and started saving it. They had enough runway, so enough time before retirement, that the numbers would balance each other out in the end. So it made sense for them. It went with their values and their goals, and they can do that. They had the money to do that. But I think that you have to evaluate those two things. You have to know why you're doing it or why you feel compelled to do it. And does it align with the overall goals that you have? I always like both, if you can do both.
And by the way, you were addressing the question of debt in terms of homeowner debt, which is certainly the most common way to look at that. But
Mhm.
I'll point out, I went through a crash and burn in 2008 where
Yeah.
for the next 4 years, I went into credit card debt just to survive, which
Yep.
is an entirely different range of debt because the interest rates are so much higher than they are for
Yeah.
homeowner debt. So,
100%.
I mean, my goal from the beginning was first of all, reverse the spiral. And then once I got the spiral reversed, I didn't want to do anything else except pay down the debt. And I was married at the time. That was actually the big challenge because she wanted to also be, buying things, doing things, and so forth. And my thing was, oh my God, I got to get rid of this debt. It's too expensive. So it was a big deal. It was a big issue. And,
Absolutely.
you have to kind of take that into account too. How big of an issue is it?
And where does your spouse sit in terms of
Yeah,
the issue? You know, if you guys aren't on the same game plan and strategy moving forward together, it's going to be very difficult to get to that goal. And I've seen that, 100 times too, where one or the other is like, I want to do paying off the debt and saving money. And then the other one is like, I'd like to go on vacation. And
Mhm.
I think we have to make room for each other in my relationship. That's what I'm trying to do, is make room for what my spouse wants and he makes room for what I want, and we come together and compromise on which direction we're going and how we can get there. But if we don't have the buy-in from each other, then we're no longer working together. So
True.
that
Yeah.
it's fracturing that partnership, and it feels gross to be the one that's like, we need to save money.
Mm.
And no, you can't do that. Now you just like intentionally or unintentionally, I guess, made your spouse your kid. And that is never a good feeling at all. Like, you don't want to treat them like your kid. You want them to be a partner and advocate for the same things that you are. And it doesn't mean that it has to be 100% one thing or another. Like, even if you have debt that you want to pay down and it seems insurmountable. There's debt calculators out there to show you if you start paying this towards it, you can get through it in this amount of time. I find that the visual really helps me see the future. And then you can look at, okay, well, can we cut something out of our budget so that we could still have that vacation that we want, but maybe instead of every year, maybe it's in 2 years from now, we're putting away a little less, but we're still going towards both goals and making both people happy or feel satisfied.
And I want to add in something that I think bit me with my marriage, because as you know, my marriage ended in divorce 3+ years ago. Uh, I was always the one who accepted all the financial responsibility. I was the one who did the taxes. I was the one who figured out the budget and so forth. And largely that's the way she wanted it to be. Looking back, I kind of wish I hadn't done it that way. I
Hmm.
mean, I did try to engage her in it. It's not like I
Yeah.
did try to do that, but I kind of wish I'd pushed a little bit harder on that
Hmm.
because the other part that I kind of overlooked is if only one person is responsible, that's a lot less buy-in by the other person. Yeah,
Hmm.
they're giving you the power, but they're also not bought into what you're doing necessarily.
No. Because you're doing it all on your own, essentially. And I mean,
Mhm.
I see that a lot with women, where they let the man of the house take over the bills and the budgeting and like that kind of stuff. What scares me about that too is that if something happens to that person in the
Mhm.
relationship, that other person that's left behind is completely lost. They don't even know how to get into their bank accounts. They don't know where you have bank accounts. They don't know where the money is or what the debt is. How catastrophic would that be to have your spouse die and then all of a sudden find out you've got all of this massive amount of debt or whatever it may be. I think that having a pulse on where your money is at and what's happening is a good idea. It's
I
in my
consider it
opinion.
essential. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I was not that extreme with her. I was always telling her every step of the way what was going on. So she knew about the debt level. She knew what
Yeah.
my plan was and so forth. And she did assume some of it. I mean, we had separate checking accounts. We have, we
Yeah.
had some of it divided like that. It's just that the bigger stuff, how do you handle the tax picture? How do you handle, what's going on with the business? How do you, all that stuff she left to me.
Yeah.
She felt overwhelmed by that.
Hmm.
So I guess my point is, even if you're in a situation like that, it's still good to try to find a way to involve the other person in it. Even though
Yeah.
they feel overwhelmed by it, it's still better to do it
Hmm.
because otherwise, it ultimately, I mean, after the divorce, my ex still comes after me for like, I got to do the taxes. Help me do the taxes.
How do I do that? Where do I go?
Where do
Yeah.
I go?
Uh,
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think too that in my coaching practice, which was abundance consciousness, it was all about it's all about becoming conscious of the abundance in your life, which includes money. It's not
Mm,
exclusive to money, but it includes money. And working in this industry for the last 16 years and then coaching for the last 9 years or 10 years, in that capacity, what I've seen is that most people avoid their money.
mhm,
And, that when it comes to the law of attraction,
mhm,
avoiding something is not the direction that you want to go. So we need to find a way through the avoidance behavior, the way through the overwhelm, make it easy and exciting and something you want to do because the power of two, the intention between two people setting a goal and moving forward towards it energetically is so incredibly profound and so incredibly powerful. Why not amplify the signal, what you're trying to do, get your spouse on board? And it doesn't have to look like, whatever you think it has to look like. People ask me that all the time. Well, what do you and your husband do? What my husband and I do, we have separate accounts.
mhm,
That works for us. We have things that he takes care of, and I have things that I take care of, and
mhm,
that works for us. We come together and have a net worth conversation. We talk about the savings that we have all the time in his accounts and my accounts, and what those things are earmarked for, so that we're not, like out there spending some money that was earmarked for something else. And then when it comes to like bigger purchases, like $500 or more, we discuss those things like, should we get this? Or, is this valuable? Like, what do we want to do here? And we're doing it together. Where I've seen like my brother and his wife, they do things completely different. They have a joint account together and everything goes into that account to pay all the bills. And then they get like a stipend every 2 weeks. Of however much, and then they can use that stipend to go get their nails done or their hair done or go for pedicures or whatever it is. That's what they created that works for them. I created something that works for us, and that's constantly changing. And you in your relationship, if you're listening to this, you got to talk about what works for you and what works for your spouse and how you guys can come together and have those conversations. I tell you, my husband and the money conversation has been the most awakening part of not my entire life, but one of the most awakening conversations I've ever had because your belief systems and what's slowing you down, what's cutting off money, what's blocking money from you show up right quick when you start,
mhm.
talking about money with your spouse.
Yeah,
So it's
very
an
true.
opportunity to learn.
Yes. It turns out that among other things, our spouses or our significant others are also our mirrors in ways that we never
100%.
expected.
100%. And I have so many stories of different ways where I was like pissed off at my husband. And in my reflection, realizing, oh, that story's coming from me and I'm putting it on him.
It's humbling when you realize that too.
Yeah. And kind of scary to ask the question when you don't know. I've
Mm.
made that a priority in my marriage of asking the hard questions of I'm assuming this. When you say this, this is the story that I am hearing in my head. Is that what you mean? 100% of the time, I was wrong. 100% of the time, I have been wrong about what I thought he said. But it takes a lot of courage to ask the question.
It also takes the courage to have the communication. You've mentioned the communication a few times now, and I'm glad you did because it's one of those words and one of those concepts that doesn't get enough attention because
Yeah.
literally everything in our lives that is important to us requires, not just needs, requires, it absolutely requires top level communication, the best communication we can give it.
Yeah.
And there's really no limit as to how high that level is because even the best communicators will stumble. I mean, it's one of the most important things we have to deal with in our lives. So,
Yeah.
especially developing it with our spouses and our significant others is huge. And it's huge in any other area of our life when we're talking about a money program here. That's what we're doing here. Anything involving money has to have communication attached to it, and very often does not. In fact, I'm going to throw something out. I think you're probably going to agree with it, but as your experience as a financial planner and money coach, just give me your feedback. My take is that people talk the least and communicate the least about money compared to anything else in their lives.
100%. Yep. Absolutely. People just don't talk about it. They're scared to talk about it, scared to know
Mm.
about it. People are scared. I mean, when I started in on the belief side of things, I was already a financial advisor. I didn't realize that I had anxiety about checking my bank account.
Mm.
Like, I didn't like doing it. Every Wednesday and Friday when our pay cycles would show up, I didn't want to check my bank account. I'd get this like, for no reason. It didn't
Mhm.
matter how much money was in there. It didn't matter how much money was not in there. It was the exact same pattern over and over again. And I had to deal with that because it's an old fight or flight pattern that was installed at some point that I was living on and I didn't want to anymore. And that's, how abundance consciousness was born, was trying to understand how to move through the emotional and the energetic side of our belief systems and our belief systems with money.
Interesting. You should mention that because I'm recalling that I've told the story many times now, and I've told it here on the show about how my business crashed in 2008. My ex's business also got wiped out. So we lost everything in 2008. And by
Mm,
2012, I was deep in debt. We were deep in debt. We were just swimming in the stuff. The income had practically disappeared. I mean, it was just a really, really bad situation. And in the midst of all of that, I found myself dealing with two things. First of all, I had parents who grew up and lived in the Great Depression.
mm,
That was their formative years, especially for my mom. My dad was a teenager by then, but my mom was in her 5 to 9 years, so that was really formative years for her. Um, what came out of that was a whole lot of attitudes about money that got passed along to me and to my brother and to my sister because that's what happens. It gets passed along, right?
uh,
So here I am in the midst of my crisis, dealing with all these attitudes, the pretty much negative attitudes about money. I mean, not, my parents were trying to be negative; they weren't. They were
no.
actually trying to be supportive about it. But nevertheless, that's the way it played out. And so I'm dealing with all this stuff about money, and I'm finding myself, to take your story, I'm looking at my bank accounts, and I had all my credit card bank accounts, right? And they're all telling me how deep in debt I am, and it was freaking me out. And it was literally,
Totally.
it was feeding into this negative spiral that I had going on in my mind that was basically saying, you'll never get out of debt. You're going to go bankrupt. You're going to lose your home. You're going to lose everything. I mean, that was going on day after day after day. And I found a way to twist it around because I remember it took a few years before we were able to pay down the first card to the point where it was zero. And I said, you know what? I'm going to use that as a positive. So when I get it down to zero, I'm going to celebrate. And I'm like working really hard to get this one down. Of course, the one that I picked to bring down was the highest interest one. You know, I'm a little bit smart about that kind of thing. Go after
Yeah.
the one that's going to save you the most money. So that's what I was doing. And it kept getting lower and it kept getting closer. And I said, "Oh, come on, when are we going to get there?" And I know how the math works, but that didn't matter. My emotions were saying, "Wait a minute, we're getting here way too slowly. This should happen a lot faster than it does." But eventually we finally got down there. And I remember I paid off the final payment on that. And then, of course, you know how it is with revolving interest accounts. You still have to pay the final interest the next month. And I knew that was coming. So I waited till I got that one. I paid the final interest fee. Oh, I finally paid that one off. Now, I still had like three or four other accounts that were just, chock full of debt, but at least I had that one down. And that actually helped me to feel good enough to keep not only staying with the plan of paying down the debt, but it also helped me to realize I'm going to get there. We're going to get there. We're going
Hmm.
to actually achieve being out of debt. And so it happened. And not only did we finally get out of debt, the thing that amazed me, I've told this one before, is that we got out of debt in the middle of the pandemic when
Yeah.
all the incomes are down. Our income was down. Everybody's income was down. And I've told this story about how, the discretionary funds is what paid it off. it was an astonishing experience to go through that. Now, I'm divorced now, 3 years divorced. It's not like I'm swimming in assets. I'm not. The assets got wiped out years ago by 2008, so
Yeah.
I'm still dealing with financial issues, but I did get to the point where the debt got paid off. So for me, not only was paying off the debt the right thing to do, it was the right thing for me to do emotionally. It was the right thing for me to do with my mindset because that experience enabled me to realize I really can have abundance, even though I don't have it yet.
Mhm.
That's the point I want to leave.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think what you're describing, most people go through. I know I would go through that in my way. And, I always say map the pattern, like what's happening. Ask yourself some questions about what is going on instead of just avoiding it and running away. Like sit with yourself. And I actually call it out in my more program. I call it CAST. But first, you calm your nervous system. That's the C. You
Okay.
have to calm your nervous system because trying to logic with yourself while you're in that heightened state is like trying to reason with a toddler having a tantrum. You
Yes,
can't.
very true.
You can't. Yeah, there's no logic. Your
No.
brain, the logic part of your brain is shut off when you're in that fight, flight, freeze. And that's where you are right now. So you have to calm your system and then acknowledge where you're at. That's the A. So like where are you at? And I think that's the one of the most important things. Like I always call it baby Jody, like the little kid that's freaking out inside of me, baby Jody, what's wrong? And the spiral that I would often find is I'm not going to have enough money. I'm not going to be able to pay my bills. I'm going to end up homeless and no one's going to love me. And then I'm going to die. And it would go right to the end point in the way that I felt every single time I opened my bank account. Again, it didn't matter how much money was in there or how much wasn't in there. I had lots of money in there and still had the same feeling, and had next to none or in the overdraft and felt the same way. It was the pattern. You're getting into the pattern and the pattern is taking over. It's an automated response, just like our computers, when you have an automatic reply on your email. Every time I opened my bank account, that was the automatic reply. I had to understand what was going on so that I could start to question those things. Like, is it absolutely true that I'm not going to be able to pay my bills? This would happen on the first, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Like all my bills would come out on the first, and then my bills would come out, and I'd have money left, and I'd be like, "Oh my God, I'm not going to be able to pay my bills on the first, the next first, like 30 days away from now." Like, hello, let's live in today land instead of 3 weeks, a month, 2 years down the road. Okay, today, you're just fine. Is it absolutely true that you're going to end up homeless and then nobody's going to love you and then you're going to die? That's pretty damn extreme. Like,
It really is.
I I'm pretty sure I have at least one friend would let me sleep on their couch, like this was before I was married. So like I don't think so. I could worst case scenario, my parents are still around. I could move into their basement. I'm sure if I was completely stranded, and I've been there before too, where those things felt true, but I wasn't homeless, and nobody stopped loving me, and I didn't die. So I could logic with myself once I was calmed down and see that, oh, this is just a program. This is just what I've programmed myself to do, or the environment, or wherever it came from. This is my program. But just like a computer, I can change the program. And I love how you said that you had a plan on how you would celebrate. A lot of financial advisors will actually tell you to attack the smallest card you have first for that exact reason.
Mm.
Because if you only owe $1,000 on this card, but you owe 5,000 on this card, obviously the $1,000 one's going to take you less time to pay, but you're going to get satisfaction. Like you've gotten to your goal, you celebrate, and it teaches your system and your beliefs, I can do it. It is possible to do it. And then it gives you that oomph to keep going along that track.
I
So,
love it. Yeah,
yeah, you
really
got to
good.
celebrate.
You have to celebrate. Celebration is not just critical to handling money, it's critical to everything that you want to have happen in your life for the good. It's
Yeah,
all of it. Yeah.
absolutely. 100%.
I want to bring in one more topic while we still have a little time today. Today, like I said, it's going to be a little bit of a shorter episode than it normally is, but I do want to bring in one more. And this actually comes through my friend Elmer, who we've answered some questions for in past episodes, he shared a video with me today, a YouTube video by a gentleman. I presume he was from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, somewhere around there. I'm not sure where he's from, but he had that Eastern, Middle Eastern kind of look to him. He sounded very American, so I can't say I know what the accent was. It was not like that. But he has an interesting history. Among other things, he at one point was a monk. He left the monastery, went to MIT, had a very successful career. He became a CEO. He was on boards. I mean, he has had this really diverse, varied career, very successful in so many ways in his life. And the purpose for making his video, it was like a 15, 17-minute video. The purpose for his video was to talk to everybody about the times that we're in where we're having to deal with what's often called things like fake news or deep fakes, issues like AI able to recreate people's images, recreate video, all that kind of stuff. And his point is, we now live in a time where we all have to learn how to discern in the face of evidence that tells us to the contrary.
Yeah.
And that's a tough thing to do. It's especially gotten very difficult. He told a story about a very expensive phone call that really illustrated the point. It was a story about a man who worked for a bank in Hong Kong, in which in the story he receives a phone call from the CEO of the bank instructing him to do a very large bank transfer, $25 million bank transfer. And of course, he needs to check all that. And so they show how there's a Zoom call where he can see the bank president and three of his other main contacts, and they're all giving him information about, why does he need to do this and so forth. He ends up doing it and finds out later on that all of them were deep faked videos and that the money,
No.
yeah, yeah. And the money went completely disappeared from the bank. I mean, he basically gave the money away without realizing he was giving the money away,
Ugh.
which is just a stunning story when you hear about it. But nevertheless, that's the era we live in. So the question that he was raising is, well, how do you avoid that kind of a situation? How do you discern? What could you have done to discern that there was something going on there, that there was something wrong? And
Mm.
he's basically trying to encourage people to develop critical thinking skills. That's what
Yeah.
his video is all about. Great skill to have. I'm con I'm in contact with my friend Elmer over it, and we're chatting. He's also watching one of our episodes, by the way. He loved our episode lately, the last one we had
Mm.
last week. Yeah, he loved that one. But he's watching our episode. I'm watching this video, and we're chatting back and forth. And I'm saying to him, it's interesting what this guy's saying because all the things that he does with critical thinking, I just kind of do. I didn't really think about it, but I just do them. And he's laying out his whole agenda and so forth. And I'm asking myself, okay, so how did I get into the critical thinking mode in the first place? And I realized it was way back when I was very young. I don't remember how I arrived at this point, but I arrived at a point where I said, anytime that someone says something to me, the first question I'm going to ask myself is, how do they know that? And I'm not going to be satisfied with, they're an authority or they're my teacher or whatever. I want to know how they actually know it.
Mhm.
And that became the foundation for my critical thinking skills. Now, I didn't have any clue at the time that's what I was doing. So in a sense, I was kind of lucky about it.
Yeah.
But that did become foundational for me. And even to this day, I mean, I don't know if I've actually told our listeners here, that I have an AI project that I'm working on, and it's made tremendous strides in the last month alone. It's been really exciting. But one of the things I've learned working with the AI is that skill of asking, how do they know that? Really works very well with AI. It works very well with human beings too, by the way. That's one of the
Mhm.
reasons why it's such a great discernment skill. But with AI, like how often have you had, for those of you who have had a conversation with an AI, how often have you had the AI give you some new facts that you never heard before and you're just blown away by it? I mean, I think anybody who's done anything with AI, who's experimented with it, has had that experience at least once because
Mhm.
it is amazing what the AI can tell you.
Mhm.
Try questioning some of that data sometime. Just
Mm.
try it.
Imagine if you
Maybe.
use that strategy watching the news.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. Well, actually, AI is one of my favorite ways I don't look at the news very much. I'll maybe read an article. That's about it.
Yeah.
But if I see an article I'll ask myself the same question. I'll say, how do they know that? And then I'll go to the AI and I'll say, how do they know this is true? I literally will ask the question that way. How do they know this is true? And then the AI will gather the information and tell me that. And then I'll usually follow up with, well, what does the other viewpoint say? Because I want to know what the other viewpoint is. That's part of the critical thinking process.
Yeah,
So I wanted to bring
absolutely.
this up because I think this is a topic that everybody's being faced with where we can't, none of us can avoid it anymore because it's all right in our face. All the different ways that people are basically trying to dupe us. We need to be able to know how to do this.
Absolutely. I think critical thinking is so important right now. I mean, it's always been important, but even exponentially more important as AI kicks off and it has the ability to do all of these
Mm,
things. People have the ability to do these things through AI. For me, I'm going to talk about the woo side of things,
mm,
the gut instinct or, uh I forgot the other word that I was going to use, but the gut instinct that we have about different things. Like I learned about the energetic perspective from horses and how horses, animals really, are a mirror to us. They don't have a filter on their face when they react to whatever it is that they're sensing from you. So you might have a smile on your face, but they read your energy. The whole of your energy is saying whatever's inside. So you might be trying to, lie to the world and say, I'm happy, or I'm not afraid of this giant animal, or whatever it is. And they clock it and they know something doesn't add up here. And it's literally that they have receptor sites inside of their gut to receive the
mm,
energy. And so do we. Our guts are smaller than horses, and we have the ability to, not react the way that they will because they're pack animals. So they're automatically in fight or flight if they don't. If you're showing them an incomplete picture, that makes them feel scared, and then they react right away. Depending on the horse, it could be a big reaction. If it's an older horse, it might not be a big reaction, but we're doing this all the time with people. And this is something that I really practiced early on in my spiritual practice was discerning my own energy from other people's and reading those energetic signatures to figure out what was going on. And I can't tell you the amount of times where I've had this feeling, intuition, that's the word I was going to use. I had this feeling something isn't adding up. And I was right. I mean, I was just telling Walt earlier in this conversation that I had a gut feeling with these individuals that we should ask for X, Y, and Z inside of a contract. It wasn't on there. Asked if we could write it on. I knew, like, my gut was saying, write this on there. Did I write it on there? No, because I wasn't really sure how to say it and I didn't want to be bothersome and difficult and all of these things. Fast forward 6 months into the future, I really wish that I would have written that on there because now it's coming into play where it would be a slam dunk for me if that was written on said contract. So I think that we're getting that information, and I think we need to sit with ourselves without all of the things. So in silence, or, maybe it's not complete silence if silence bothers you, but sit with ourselves and get to know ourselves. And when things are happening outside of ourselves, where you need that discernment, then doing the check-in. How does this feel? Does this feel right? Does this feel wrong? You know internally when somebody is BSing you. You just know. But often we just ignore that signal. So it's trying to strengthen that and using it on different things, like try in a baby way to start strengthening that signal of, like, oh, I can trust this person, and it's I can trust my husband's going to bring me dinner tonight, or like, like smaller things so that you can have the same wins and you can build that strength and that belief system that I know. But it's really difficult right now. We're going through a lot in our family personally, and trying to build a house and going through IVF and all of these things. And things are not going according to my plan, which is probably good. I believe God, the creator, the universe, whatever you want to call it, has a better plan, one that I can't even fathom or imagine at this point in time. And I cling to that belief system. So I know that it's going to be great. But I have, as things have been crumbling and falling apart in different ways, in terms of the way I quote unquote think it should go, I have this gut feeling everything is going to be okay. And I can't quantify it. I can't see what's going to happen next. I can't see how it's going to play out. I can't even see the next step in front of me of what I'm supposed to do. But I have this resounding feeling within of it's going to be okay and it's going to work out. So when you have that feeling of like, this isn't right or this is right, you know, test your feeling a little bit, but try and trust yourself because you know.
I love that. That's absolutely true. And I love the way that you talk about developing that feeling because you can develop it. And I know from
Yeah.
experience because I thought I didn't have the feeling and then I found that I actually had it. It was there all
Well,
along. I just didn't know it.
yeah. You know what it feels like, or and I mean nobody teaches you to rely on that feeling. They say you should have like facts and evidence and la la, la. But if the facts and evidence that are being presented to you don't feel right, there's a reason. Like we are electrical signals. We are a transmitter. We're receiving information and sending out information. So at some point we need to bring that into the conversation and believe that.
I love that. One other thing I want to bring in before we wrap this up, I want to go back to the example that was given, the guy who gave away $25 million on behalf of his bank. I'm sure he made a lot of friends doing that. But I'm sure also people have been thinking, well, what could he have done? Because he had all these images of these videos of people talking to him that he knew. He heard their voices, he could see them talking and all that kind of stuff. How could he know? Well, there's actually a clue in what he could have done there, and it comes from our everyday lives.
Hmm.
How often have you maybe contacted your bank? Maybe you've signed up for something online or whatever, and you got a text message saying, please give us this code.
Yeah.
It's called, in tech talk,
Verification.
it's verification. In tech talk, it's called 2FA, meaning two-factor authentication. And all it
Hmm.
really means is a second way of verifying that, yes, this is really you. Yes, you are the ones who's going to be doing this. And yes, you're the one who's authorizing it. And the reason it works is because you're the only one who has your phone. You're the only one who has your phone number. That's why it works. That's why it's so effective. Well, this guy at the bank could have done the same thing. He had the bank president's phone number. He could have said, hang on a second, I just need to take a break. He could have turned his video off, turned his mic off, gotten his phone out, and called the bank president and said, hey, am I talking to you on the video right now? He would have had his
Yeah.
instant verification.
Absolutely. And I bet that that guy felt something wasn't quite right.
Hmm.
But he couldn't put his finger on it. And we second guess ourselves and we think to, oh, especially authority figures, his bosses, like the chairman of the boards or who, like it sounds like a lot of fancy people were in this room. So you don't want to mess up and not do what they want you to do. But we have to listen to that gut feeling. It's telling us something so incredibly important. And like you said, he could have shut off everything and been like, just give me a sec. I just need to go to the washroom really quick.
Yeah,
And he could have phoned his boss, and his boss could have said, yeah, I'm on the call. Okay, I just wanted to make sure because something felt a little off to me or whatever. And if they think you look stupid, well, that's better than losing $25 million, dollars, I
yeah.
think.
And if he had made the phone
Really?
call, his boss would have said, I'm not on a video call. What are you talking about?
That's right. And then, I mean, how different could it have gone? Could he have said, well, somebody has, copied your image, your likeness, like there's a video, like I'm talking to you real time and talking to this person, this person, and this person. And maybe they could have got authorities involved and somehow traced the connection because, like,
All
oh, I'm
kinds of
typing it in,
possibilities.
it's not going through. Like it could have been so different if he would have followed that gut instinct that I bet you he had because we all get them.
Mhm.
Our bodies are always talking to us.
We just have to learn to listen. So
Yeah.
it's a shorter episode, but this is a really, really good one. So I'm glad we did this.
Yeah, this was
I,
fun.
I look forward to doing next week. Thank you again, Jodie Lynn. Thank you to our listeners everywhere. We will see you all next time here on Money. Want to get your question answered here on the podcast? Just go to moneypodcast.net, fill in the form with either a video or a typed question, and your question may be included on the next episode. Moneypodcast.net. For more on this, listen to the entire podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts.